Hey Ghouls and Goblins, welcome back. My name is Mel. This is going to be a super chill reading vlog where I read as many Tor.com novellas as I possibly can in 24 to 48 hours. I don't know exactly how long this vlog's going to be. You do because it's in the title and probably the thumbnail, but I don't know. It is currently 6:30 and I am on sprints with Cassidy along with Kaylee and Bree and Rye. We are just gonna sprint for as long as we possibly can, and I figured what better time to start reading. I'm gonna rope my Patreons in tomorrow and we're gonna do like an impromptu 24-hour readathon, but I figured I'm reading anyway, so I might as well go ahead and start. And so I gave them a bunch of different options for different Tor novellas that I could read. Most of them are either sci-fi or fantasy, but there is one horror novella in here, and that is one of the ones that won. And it's River of Teeth by Sarah Gailey. It's the one I'm going to be starting with, and it's about feral hippos. So I'll go into a little more depth about that one in a minute. And then we have Elder Race by Adrian Tchaikovsky. That one is a fantasy novella that Emma has really enjoyed and has been wanting me to read, so definitely going to give that one a go. After that, we have a tie between Hard Reboot by Django Wexler. You guys know that I love Django Wexler, and that one is a sci-fi. It's supposed to be like Pacific Rim meets Transformers or something like that, so I'm interested in it. And then we also have Warcry by Brian McClellan. He wrote the Powder Mage series, so I'm interested in giving that one a go. I think it's fantasy as well. And then We Shall Sing a Song into the Deep by Andrew Kelly Stewart. I think that one is fantasy as well. Maybe a little bit of sci-fi if I'm not mistaken. So those are kind of my top priorities. I have a couple of others that are contenders. The Border Keeper by Kristen Hall and The Drowning Eyes by Emily Foster. But I don't know how many of these I'm actually going to get to, so we shall see. So I am starting with Rivers of Teeth by Sarah Gailey. This is the only horror novella, and it is about an alternate reality in the early 20th century Louisiana, kind of in the swamplands, where the U.S. thought that we were going to run out of meat, and so they decided to import a bunch of hippopotamuses as an alternative meat source to breed them in the marshlands. Apparently that was actually a thing, like that was a consideration at one point in time. Of course, it didn't happen because we don't have rogue hippos, but it was something that was considered. So in this alternate reality, it actually did happen, and now you have a bunch of feral hippos and hippo wranglers, which it seems to be kind of like a gang type situation to me. And hippos are mean, hippos are savage, hippos are not slow, and I can just see how quickly this is going to turn into a horror novella. So far, I'm really enjoying the setting, which is odd because I'm not usually a historical kind of gal, but I'm getting the retro vibes from it and kind of liking it. I like the Louisiana marshland. We have barely started. I'm not very far into it at all, maybe like a chapter or two. We've been introduced to a pickpocket that has a hippo named Rosie and a guy named Hero that is about to accept a job of some kind. So I will update you guys probably once I finished it because it's only going to take me like an hour to get it done. And we'll touch base on my thoughts and then move on to the next one. Me here to say that I've been lying to you all this entire time. This is not a horror book. It wasn't supposed to be a horror book. It's like alternate reality. Goodreads is listing it a lot as like fantasy. Cassidy said she was considering it more sci-fi, but it's just historical alternate reality. It's more of a revenge story. It's not horror. I thought it was because all of Sarah Gailey's other books that I like am familiar with, like Just Like Home, is a horror novel. So I guess I just assumed without really thinking about it, because the synopsis does say like savage hippos. So I didn't really think about it actually not being a horror novel. So anyway, this is not a horror. I'm going to readjust my thoughts on it and the way that I think about it because I thought it was a horror novel and I was wrong. So I wanted to make sure that I told you guys that I was wrong. Okay, so I really have not read much since I talked to you guys last, so I'm just gonna go and I'm gonna go back to listening, and in an hour I'll come back and talk to you. You guys, I am so excited. It is Starbucks holiday season for their drinks, and I'm not a big pumpkin spice fan, so I love the Christmas holiday drinks. Am I in the Christmas mood yet? Not really. Like, I feel like I still have to give it middle of November before I really get in the Christmas mood, but that doesn't mean that I can't go get me a drink. So I actually like the almond sugar cookie latte. I actually don't normally like almond milk, but but it works in this one, and I really enjoyed them last year, and then they went away and it made me sad. So I'm gonna go get one, and you're gonna come with me. Thank you. So it's a new day. I didn't read any more last night. I don't have an excuse because I only had an hour left of the book, and here we are, and it is now 2:40 the next day. This is definitely gonna be a 36-hour readathon because I slacked hard. But I have finished Rivers of Teeth by Sarah Gailey, and sadly, this one's just, it didn't really work for me. I was pretty much bored throughout most of it. I didn't find the characters very distinct. They all kind of sounded the same to me, and so I didn't care. The just plot of the whole thing, it was very unique and very different, and so that's what made me kind of intrigued and excited. But the actual like revenge plot just, I don't know, it didn't ever fully work for me. I did get the mafia vibes. I did like the Louisiana swamp with hippo thing, but overall the story just, it wasn't for me. It also did something that I think some people will really appreciate, but I just didn't like the way it was executed. This does have a they-them character, and there is a implied romance here, but unfortunately kind of the way that it was done was a little bit like, huh? I don't know, they were trying to make it be implied and like tension, but this was a 120-page book and it needed more time for tension in other places, and so that just wasn't really working. Like I never could get invested in it, and so it being there at all was just like, I don't know, I just didn't, it felt like it kind of took away from the actual plot because there wasn't enough time to devote to that. And then because of that, there wasn't enough time to devote to the plot, if that makes sense. But I like the idea, it just didn't execute well for me. So probably like a 2-star, it just didn't vibe with it, but that's okay. So next, I think I'm going to move on to Elder Race by Adrian Tchaikovsky. I have no idea what this is about. I think it's 2 different cultures. Emma really liked it. It is sci-fi. I have tried an Adrian Tchaikovsky before and it read like a textbook and I really didn't like it. That was Children of Time. I ended up DNFing it at like 60% in. But I'm hoping that a novella format will work well for me from him because people love Adrian Tchaikovsky, and so I want to know what all the buzz is about. So that's going to be my next read. It is... Where is my phone? Let's see how many pages it is. I lied. River of Teeth was actually 176 pages. And Elder Race is 204. So that's a pretty decent novella length, and I'm excited for it. This one and Warcry and Hard Reboot, those 3 were probably like my top 3 that I was really excited about. And this one gets excellent reviews. So I'm pumped. So let's go get started on that. Hopefully I can get it read pretty quickly. I'm doing Patreon sprints now. I will be doing those for another couple of hours before switching over to public sprints. So surely to goodness, in the next couple of hours, I can get at least 1 more novella read. And then I will listen to whichever one I don't manage to get done tonight on my way to work tomorrow, and then that'll kind of round out the readathon, I think. I don't know how many hours that's going to be. We'll calculate it later, but check-in time. I am 15% of the way through Elder Race, and I'm enjoying it. This one, I believe, I'll be honest, I have not read the full synopsis. I'm terrible. But from what I can tell so far, we have got a princess that is very concerned about her kingdom because there is going to be some kind of invading force and they need to fight magic with magic. And there is this elder tower that has always been very foreboding and very forbidden. And many years ago, the elder that lives in this tower helped them fight off this foe. And so she's gone to the tower to try to convince this elder to come back and help them once again. We also are looking at this from the elder's point of view, where we know that he is an ancestor of like us. As he's not an ancestor of us, we're an ancestor of him, like our type of generation of humans, and he has evolved and he has a very like detached way of looking at things. He is immortal and he lives in this ship-like tower thing, essentially. And he says he could have gone and just been human and lived out his life and died, but he decided not to do that. I don't know much about it other than that at this point, but I do like the contrasting things that we're getting here. We've got one point of view from Linus, who is a native of this world, and then you've also got, you know, her perspective of how she sees the Elder. But then on the flip side of that, you've got him and how he is seeing her. So it's very interesting to see those two contrasting points of view. You're not just getting one side of the story. It's nice to be able to see both. The writing style is quite formal, in my opinion, which is making it a little bit harder to feel completely immersed in the story, yet that style is working for this type of what I think is going to be a more cultural focused type story, not a high action world building type story. So far I'm enjoying it for what it is. I think as long as I don't expect it to be this big epic sci-fi, we're going to be good. And then while I was walking Ollie earlier, I got 26% of the way into Hard Reboot by Django Wexler, and this one I'm also enjoying relatively well. I'm not absolutely loving it, but it's not bad either. The main character does read quite young, and some of the style, the verbiage that he's using for this epic robot battle dystopian type world, I see why he's doing it that way, but I just don't love that type of it's almost like a teenager that thinks too highly of themselves and they're using a lot of slang. That's kind of the way I feel about this main character. But from what I can tell, this one is about a girl that has gotten herself into some debt along with her comrades, and she has taken a bet that her transformer, essentially, for lack of a better way to put it, can beat this other girl's, and she does win the bet, but then finds out that this girl has actually like cheated the system and doesn't actually have the money, and so she can't pay off her debts, and it's gonna get her into trouble. The robot battle was cool, but not super high octane, and that's not what I expect from Wexler. He's usually a very fast-paced, or at least I say usually, I've only read one book, but the book that I read, it was more like fast-paced action type thing, where this one is, but I didn't feel like the action was quite as well written, if that makes sense. Anyway, I'm having a good time. I'm interested in it. I'm interested in both of these. I have little nitpicky things about both of them, and I can already tell it's just, it is who I am, but I'm going to be annoyed by the lack of world building in either one because they're novellas. That's not what they're supposed to be. But the Hard Reboot, I don't think is going to lean as heavily into the characters. It's going to lean more into the very isolated plot, whereas I'm going to want more of everything. And then in Elder Race, I think it's going to do a pretty decent job of explaining and exploring not the characters themselves, but their roles in society and the culture. But again, there was a little piece where she was talking about the battle that happened once before and what they're facing and why she's asking for his help. And I'm like, wait, slow down. Go back. I want to know more about that, but we're not going to get that. So I think both of them are going to frustrate me from that standpoint. I knew that going into this vlog, but I was just hopeful that if one did it well, that I would be able to look past all of that. But I'm experimenting to see if novellas really aren't for me, and I think that that's probably going to be proven in this. I don't mind, and we were talking about this on Sprints last night, I don't mind novellas that are serialized novels, so something that is broken up into novellas, but then when you put all of them together, it does make a full-fledged book. Those I don't mind. You see that a lot in like romance. There's some like Amazon thrillers that are done that way. But when you break them up into short stories, and they're not short stories, but like, not short story in like the traditional sense of the word, but like a short version of a story that I'm used to getting, I just want more. I need it to be more fleshed out. I want to know more about the characters. I want to know more about the backstory and the world and the plot, and it's not what it's supposed to be. So I think I'm going to struggle with that, but I knew that going in, and I'm hopeful that both of these will be books that I at least enjoy and I'm happy to have spent my time with. It's always good to be left wanting more, like you enjoyed it well enough to want to know, but I don't want to be left wanting more, like that empty feeling like I wasn't satisfied by the book just because I didn't get enough from it. Does that make sense? It's really hard to explain, and hopefully I did a decent job explaining that. So anyway, I'm going to go back to reading both of these. I think I've got like 2.5 hours left of Elder Race left, and then about an hour to an hour and a half of Hard Reboot left. Probably will only get through these 2 novellas tonight, and then I may end up stopping there, so that'll be 3 total for this vlog. But if for some reason I'm able to hammer these out and I get them done super, super early, then I will try to fit in Warcry by Brian McClellan. But I'm going to have to buy that one. So low on the totem pole of list of things. Anyway, I'm gonna go work on all of this, and I will touch base when I've finished one or the other, and hopefully it's a good time. So wish me luck. Okay guys, little outside clip. I am about to be doing more sprints, but I did want to check in with you guys on my thoughts of Hard Reboot by Django Wexler. Finished it this morning, and I enjoyed it. I had a good time with it. The 2 main female characters did sound a little bit too similar for my liking. So like in their points of view, it was really, really hard to tell them apart, but in their, like in each other's points of view that they sounded different, but just reading from their own heads, sometimes they sounded a little bit too similar. I liked the robot deal. There was not enough robot battling for my liking. The world was cool. The characters were cool. The relationship was interesting, but just not enough complete world building for me. Nothing that I just particularly disliked. I enjoyed it. I had a good time with it. It was entertaining. I liked the way it was written. No surprise, it's Django Wexler. So I think I'm going to end up giving this one like a high 3 star, maybe a low 4. I had a good time with it. And the only thing that I find a little weird, which is good and weird all at the same time, is Django Wexler does lesbian relationships in all of his books. And I say him, and I need to double check that. But I just find that interesting because, to my knowledge, he is not a lesbian female. Not to say you can't write about other things. He seems to do it well. I just find it interesting. So, just so that you know, lesbian couple in this one. And it's a pretty prominent relationship, actually, in this book. It's not just kind of in the background. They talk about it a pretty good bit. So, enjoyed all of that. Had a good time with this one. Now I need to get back to Elder Race because I am slacking so very hard on Elder Race. I just, for some reason, keep putting it down and not wanting to pick it back up. It's not bad. It's just a much more, I don't know, it's a more difficult writing style. He does have a little bit more of a flowery prose, and so it can be harder to just get fully immersed in the way that Adrian Tchaikovsky writes. So I think that that's all it is. I'm still interested in the world and interested in what's going on. I'm sorry that this vlog has been so lackluster and not super entertaining with not a ton of thoughts. I had planned to do more for this, but unfortunately, life has gotten in the way. So hopefully you guys enjoyed just hearing these thoughts on these 3 novellas. Not a whole lot more going on, but my battery is dying, so I'm gonna check out, and once I finally finish Elder Race, I'll let you know. Okay guys, so I have officially finished Elder Race by Adrian Tchaikovsky, and I liked it. I won't say that I loved it. It's not really, I don't know. It's a story that I like with topics that I enjoy in books, but it's not necessarily something that's topics by themselves being the full 100% focus of the story 100% works for me. I did find myself kind of bored throughout it and not overly interested because we're focusing a lot on cultural differences, but we're also flipping back and forth between like characters' inner thoughts. And there wasn't a lot of like character development. Obviously, there's not a lot of world building in this novella. There's not a whole lot of things like plot. I mean, there is a plot to it, but it's not the sole focus of the book. So there just really wasn't enough driving the story forward to keep me intrigued, I guess is a good way to put that. We did have a couple of scenes that were cool with the demon, but overall it was just skipping things that I normally would love to see in a fantasy or sci-fi. And so, unfortunately, there were moments where I was like, dang it, go back and tell me more about that. And it's not going to. So, I think what this has taught me is that really and truly novellas are just not my thing. It doesn't mean that I won't be able to read one and enjoy it. And there are going to be some that I will consider. But as a general rule of thumb, I'm just not going to gravitate toward novellas. And I was curious to see if that held true for novellas written by people that I know and enjoy already. So the Django Wexler was definitely the one that was the most successful for me. It was probably the most fast-paced and had the most plot to it, whereas the Adrian Tchaikovsky was a lot more it focused on culture, and that was fine. It was about an anthropologist, and I do think that it was very, very interesting. And had this been something that had a little bit more substance to it in a bigger novel, I think I could have enjoyed it a lot more. It's probably going to be a 3-star because technically it was very, very good. It did exactly what it was trying to do. I can 100% see how people that like more of a drawn out story and a more like isolated focus might really enjoy this novella, but there was just things that didn't work for me. So I don't want to give it a low rating because while I did not dislike it, I didn't love it, but I can definitely see why people do, and I think it was a good story. So again, Django Wexler was my favorite, then The Age of Tchaikovsky. The Sarah Gayla did not really work for me at all, which I'm not overly surprised by. Historical fiction, not usually my jam. I was expecting it to be something different because of other books that I know of from her. But yeah, I think this vlog was a success. I know it was short and sweet, but hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Let me know down in the comments if you've read any of these and if you enjoyed them. If there's a novella that you think is just screaming my name, let me know. But I'm going to go into it with like cautiously optimistic because these were semi-successful. So if you guys want to hang out with me some more, links as always to my Patreon as well as Instagram, Twitter, and Goodreads all down in the description box below. Please give this video a big thumbs up if you liked it, subscribe if you wanna, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!